3 days later, and the result still stings, but if you're going to lose early on in the season, it better be to a ranked team. Nebraska's made a jump, and the college football world knows what's coming, but they've still got issues to correct and 8 more games to work through them. 6 Big Ten teams remain unbeaten, and even though he's locked into going 1-0 each week, Matt Rule knows what lies ahead on this schedule. So today, we'll talk about where Nebraska went wrong against Illinois, how they can improve to win their next few games, and I'll give you my thoughts on some of the other teams in the Big Ten. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my Purdue game preview. And if you're still a believer in this team getting to 8 wins, hit the like button and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
He's hit and sacked. He's taking a shot downfield, wide open end zone, caught, touchdown.
Nebraska wasn't the only top 25 team to go down this weekend. First up was Oklahoma State, who hosted Utah and their backup QB. All offseason, I kept hearing about Ollie Gordon being the best back in America and the OSU O-line not only being the oldest and most experienced, but that they were on the same level as Oregon, Texas, and Georgia. Utah's got a beastly defense, but when your best player's held to 11 carries for 42 yards while the other back breaks off 25 for 182, it's going to be really hard to win that game. The score looks close, and Alan Bowman did everything he could to keep him in that game, but Utah was up 19 with 6 minutes left, and they dominated the time of possession by 25 minutes. Next up was USC playing at Michigan, a team most people expected would lose since they didn't have a QB who could throw it, and they were right about that. Alex Orji was 7-12 for 32 yards. Their offense was completely one-dimensional, but it didn't matter. USC's defense got beat in the worst ways. Michigan's offense only scored 3 touchdowns on Saturday, and all 21 of those points came down to 3 plays. A 53-yard touchdown run in the first quarter, a 41-yard TD run in the second quarter, and a 63-yard run into the red zone, I think with 2 minutes left or even less than that. The defense that's looked so much better lost the game on those 3 plays. They lost that game because of missed tackles, taking bad angles, and losing one-on-ones against better blockers. Oklahoma hosted Tennessee, and the big takeaway there was seeing Jackson Arnold get benched before halftime. And you can usually tell pretty quick which 5-star QBs are set to live up to the hype. And so far this season, he's been the one player that's held that team back. Venables made the decision to ride with the backup after Arnold's 3rd turnover, but it was too late at that point. Tennessee already had a 16-point lead, and they hung on to win that one on the road by 10. Last up was Kansas State, a team Vegas said should win 10 games this year, a team who just smoked a top 25 Arizona last Friday night. They went on the road to BYU and they got destroyed. Their offense put up almost 400 yards, but they turned it over 3 times and they had to settle for 3 field goals. You could argue K-State's the team with more individual talent, but they just couldn't hold on to the ball and they couldn't get out of their own way with penalties. Every single one of those losses made me feel better about what happened in Nebraska. Oklahoma State got dominated on their home field. USC couldn't stop the same play that gashed them 3 times for 21 points. Oklahoma's only 4 games in, and they're already looking at a QB change after they paid the wrong one. And Kansas State fans had even higher expectations for their team, and they went out and dropped a game that they were supposed to win by 7 points. The other team I can point to and say I'm glad we aren't them is Baylor, a team led by a defensive guru in Dave Aranda. All they had to do to win that game was play zone and let their guys bat the ball away, but that's not what happened. Their corner was playing man, he slipped in the end zone, and Shador found Wester all alone on a Hail Mary to tie the game and go to overtime. Then, a few plays later, Travis Hunter knocked the ball out at the goal line, and that was the game. The teams who come up with the big plays in the biggest moments are never dead. That's why this 3-1 Colorado team is so dangerous. They don't have the depth or the physicality to play Big Ten opponents, but their top 5 players all have potential for a game-changing moment any given play. And that's the biggest takeaway from the Nebraska game. When it came down to it and Rule needed one of his guys to step up and win the game, none of them could do it. The field goal unit missed a 39-yarder. The number one receiver dropped the go-ahead touchdown that kept Illinois alive. The running back didn't have the awareness to stay in bounds before Dillon got him the ball. And the quarterback, who played about as well as any of us could have hoped, missed on a wide-open touchdown pass. There were plenty of good things that happened in that game too, and I'm not trying to take away from those, but at the end of the day, they needed one more that they missed on. I titled this video "The Harsh Truth About Nebraska's Loss" because nobody likes to hear it and it doesn't give you an uplifting or a hopeful feeling going forward. But there's still a disconnect between the players and knowing how to win. After a loss, everybody wants to put the blame somewhere. Was it the play calls on offense? Is the special teams to blame? Did Tony White call a bad D? And I don't think it's any of that. I think the players are still learning how to be successful in pressure situations. The first 3 weeks of the season were easy. Nebraska had the win secured by halftime. But when you have to go win a game in the final 5 minutes, that's still something they don't know how to do. They're learning, and they're definitely getting closer. Sierra Wright forcing the fumble was a prime example of that. They just needed more plays that resulted in points. I saw this Big Ten power ranking today, and it lines up with how I see things right now. Michigan showed that even though they can't throw, they'll make enough big plays to win. Illinois proved something on the road that USC still has to. Nebraska, Iowa, and Washington are all trying to recover after early season losses, and even though they're both undefeated, Rutgers and IU haven't been challenged in the Big Ten yet. Outside of the trips to Ohio State and USC, maybe you could throw Indiana in there. Nebraska's going to be the favorite in every game they play. And just like they needed a blowout loss to get them re-energized last year, I'm hoping the Illinois game is going to have the same effect. I think the hardest part about losing wasn't that Illinois came in and dominated as the better team. And I do think they were the better team that day, but that's not the point I'm making. The hard part's knowing the game could have been won 4 different ways, but player execution led to a depressing result. With Frost's staff, we could complain about stupid play calls, coaches who weren't ready for this big of a job, and the obvious lack of player development. But with Rule, that changed. Players look the part. They know their assignments. Coaches give them the opportunity to go out and be the hero. They just have to go and get it done. There was one thing Matt Rule said in today's presser that really hit me. He talked about some of the guys playing tight with the game on the line, but Dillon and the freshmen didn't have that issue. The losing culture that the seniors on this team were brought up in so obviously affects how they handle close games today, and it really tells us 2 things. One, the young guys and the transfers might have to be the difference makers through Big Ten play. And 2, that the new era under Rule is going to look a lot different than what we're used to. It's just going to take another year to fill up the depth chart with guys who don't have that bad taste in their mouth. As far as the rest of the season goes, we've seen this movie before. Nebraska suffers a bad loss, then they bounce back and rattle off some wins while they're motivated. But unlike last season when they stumbled down the stretch because they were losing a bunch of turnovers, I don't think they're going to lose to teams they're supposed to beat. Now, in hindsight, you could say they were supposed to beat Illinois, but at the same time, I don't think they were. I think Illinois came in more prepared, better coached, in better position to win. And although, yes, Matt Rule has some top-tier talent, some flashy names, and Nebraska's the bigger brand, Illinois, at least at this point in the season, is the better team. I know you saw Dillon's brother Dayton committed yesterday, but he's still just a junior in high school, so we won't know how good he is as a recruit until after this season. And I've seen people make comments online about Dillon being the star in the family, so we shouldn't get overly excited about Dayton, but that's a ridiculous take. Dillon's generational, and he'll probably be the number 1 pick when he comes out after his junior season, but Nebraska's going to be in a much better place by then. They won't have to rely on having the best QB in the country to win games. Guys like Daniel Kalen, TJ Lateef, or Dayton Raiola can follow in his footsteps and be really good QBs with a lot more talent around them. Anytime you can get a player that comes from that strong of a bloodline, it's a massive win. This week's AP poll dropped Nebraska down to 31, right behind Indiana and ahead of Iowa. But in my eyes, they're still going to finish as a ranked team. Illinois is a double-digit underdog at Penn State this weekend, and then 2 of their next 3 are against Michigan and Oregon. So we'll find out how good they really are in the next few weeks. If Indiana wins on Saturday, they'll be in the top 25 by the time Nebraska heads to Bloomington. And if Rule's team bounces back to beat Purdue and Rutgers back-to-back weeks, they'll find themselves back in there too. USC only dropping 2 spots really tells you how much respect the voters have for a Big Ten road loss, and Illinois jumping 5 spots says the same about their respect for a top 25 win. It's not as fun to follow when Nebraska's not in it, but since they'll be favorites to win these next 2, there's a good chance they will be soon. I'll be back with my Purdue preview this week, but for now, I want to know what you think. Did the rest of the weekend put the Nebraska loss in perspective, or are you still pretty down after the way they played? Do your expectations on the year change, or were you already expecting an imperfect season? And how do you think Raiola responds after his first loss? He played so well, I have a hard time seeing this affect him, but maybe he learns some things from the film and takes an even bigger step forward now that he's faced adversity. But that's all I've got for the day, so until next time, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.